you have a main Enneagram type with its core motivations, but we do have a little bit of all 9 types within us. And so how do these other Enneagram
Insights with Marsha. We're so glad you're here today. And if you don't mind, give us a like and maybe subscribe. And we'd love to hear your comments because I know comments are going to be so interesting today because it's about one of my favorite topics. And it's about someone who's going to be on here who is a master of the Enneagram. We are so fortunate today to have Beth McCord, and you guys need to go look because Beth has like around 240 or 50 podcasts out about the Enneagram, and they're all amazing. So, Beth, we're so glad to have you today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
It will. Can you tell everybody a little bit about you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have been studying the Enneagram since 2001 when my kiddos at the time were 1 and 3 years old. And I can't believe it myself, but I already have 2 grandkids. So both my kids are older and married. And now my grandkids are almost the ages my kids were when I started studying the Enneagram. So we're in a really fun season here in just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. My husband and I have been married for 30 years. He was a pastor for about 20 years. And we then kind of just started to do this work with the Enneagram from a Christian perspective. And it just took off about 10 years ago, and that's what we've been doing ever since. And our real focus here is to help people to understand themselves with astonishing clarity so they can break free from self-condemnation, fear, and shame by knowing and experiencing the unconditional love, forgiveness, and freedom in Christ. So really, our goal isn't the Enneagram. Our goal is for people to know Jesus Christ and to know him intimately. And we just happen to use a tool, the Enneagram, to do that. You know, a lot of people use other personality tools or systems. That is one of the tools that we use to get to know ourselves so we can grow closer to him.
I love that because that's you just nailed it. That was get it right out there. It just helps you understand yourself, how to be your better person, but how God designed us all to be.
Yep.
It is amazing. And when you mentioned, well, number one, you don't look like you can have grandchildren. I was quite surprised.
Well, thank you.
I have grandchildren, but you don't look like it.
I did get married at the age of 20 and had both mine at the age of 25. So I did have a head start on most people.
Okay, my first one was at 24. When you said both of them at 25, do you have twins?
Yep. No,
I'm a twin. Do you have girl and boy or?
a boy and a girl. And then my daughter had both her kids by the age of 25. So we just kind of got a head start.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I have a twin brother. So yeah, it's
Oh,
really nice.
fun.
And mother had me at 22. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
when my first baby was born, she was 45. I mean, it was like her
Yeah.
baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah,
that you
exactly.
yeah. And when you say that, I love the Enneagram as far as children. And at their young ages, starting to see what their number is and therefore understand their personality and how they're wired. And it just makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. How fun. Well, we thought that today, since you're the professional, we were going to let you talk about all the numbers. And
Right.
then right now, there seems to be a lot of stress in the world, wars and different things like that. And people are worried about the economy. Of course, all they have to do is put their faith, in God, and it's all going to be okay. But certain numbers can do that better than others. So let's do a brief rundown of all the numbers and then talk about how they deal with today's stress. So take it away,
Yeah.
Beth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the Enneagram, for those that are brand new to what the Enneagram is, it's a personality typing system that helps us to understand why we think, feel, and behave in particular ways. So most personality typologies out there are going to help you to understand what you do, your behaviors, preferences. It's really kind of looking from the outside. But the Enneagram is so different because it gets to the why. So what we help people understand is it gets to our core motivations. Again, what's going on the inside. And there are 9 basic personality types, and the way I describe them is thinking about each person having their own set of lenses, so like their glass lens, and each of the 9 are a different color. Now, we go around the world thinking that everyone's wearing normal, typical glasses, that are clear. We all see the same things in life. But in reality, we're actually seeing the world very differently. And when we see it differently, we actually then interpret it and then react to it differently. And this is what can get us a little frustrated or upset or confused when someone does something completely different or thinks about something completely different than we would do it. Like, why did you think that way? Or how could you have done that? I would never. And what happens with the Enneagram, what's so great is that when we realize, oh, Sally is, let's say, a type 3 and her glasses are green, but I'm a type 9 and mine are purple. Now, the Enneagram doesn't have real colors. That's just the kind of the fun way that we do it. But then I can say, oh, Sally sees the world completely different than me. Therefore, she's going to react differently and go about life in a very different way. And so this helps me to have a new way of seeing Sally, understanding her, having compassion, grace, but also being able to work alongside or have conversations that are new and fresh that hopefully will bring us closer together. So that's really what we're here about with the Enneagram is twofold helping ourselves to know ourselves better and why we think, feel, and behave on a scale of healthy all the way to unhealthy because we want to grow, right? That is the goal in life is to grow and to be healthier. But then we can use these same tools to grow and become healthier in our relationships because we can then understand other people more at their core versus just the outward manifestations that we typically see. So there are 9 basic Enneagram types, and I'll just kind of cover each of them kind of quickly. But there are 4 core motivations that people are going to want to really pay attention to when they're trying to find their main type. Now, you can go on lots of websites and read lists of characteristics or behaviors each type might do, and those can be kind of helpful, but it's really these core motivations that get to the root of each type. So if someone out there is like, yeah, but how do I get my hands on these core motivations? All you have to do is go to our website, yourenneagramcoach.com/core motivations, and there's a free PDF that they can print off. So are you ready for me to just jump right into the 9
Yes.
types? Or do you have any questions?
Are we going to start with the one?
Yes, if
Okay.
that sounds good to you.
That sounds good. I love it.
All right. So the type 1, and we usually talk about types 1 through 9, but I will say the names that we use here just because it gives a clear description of the type we're talking about. So the type 1 is the principled reformer. They desire to be good, right, balanced, full of integrity, but they have the core fear of being wrong, bad, corruptible, unethical. And what they're going to struggle with the most is resentment because they have this inner critic that sees the imperfections of the world and it leaps out at them and assaults them with everything that needs to be fixed. And they're feeling as if they're the only adult in the room or the world that's getting this stuff done. And so resentment can build up, wanting things to be just right. But they long to hear you are good. Now, the type 2 is the nurturing supporter, and they desire to be loved, wanted, and appreciated. But they really can struggle with the fear that they are worthless, that they're not wanted or loved or unappreciated, not seeing how much they care for others. But they struggle with the part of pride. Now, what pride here means is they're going to push away or ignore their feelings and needs because they want to look at everyone else's feelings and needs and help take care of them. But what happens is because they have this really great intuition of what people need, they overdo it. They insert themselves confidently, even if someone doesn't want it, because in their mind, but you need the help, so here I am. And they want people to see this helpfulness that they give and to be appreciated. And they really long to hear you are wanted and loved. Now, the type 3 is the admirable achiever. And they desire to be admired, thought well of, have high respect, and to be achieving their highest goals. And they struggle with the fear of failure. Now, for them, their core weakness is deceit. Now, deceit here means that they believe that they're only the image they present to others. And so they have to put on a polished persona to wow people, to get that admiration and respect. But it may not be their most authentic self. Now, what they long to hear is you are loved for simply being you. They don't have to achieve all these things. The type 4 is the introspective individualist, and they desire to be unique, authentic, special, and deeply known. But they fear that they are inadequate, that people are going to keep them from having their deep emotions and being significant. But they struggle with the weakness of envy because they feel that there's something defective and flawed in them, but everyone else possesses the qualities that they lack. And therefore, they feel misunderstood and as if they don't belong. But they long to hear you are loved and you are loved and seen for exactly who you are, special and unique. Any questions so far as we then tackle
No,
the last four?
I think that's so cool because when you understand what they need to hear, like especially like we were talking about with children, and you get that in your mind, you start reinforcing that. Like you're
Yes,
fine just the way you are. And
exactly.
my husband is a 3, and one time we're sitting around with his buddies that go hunting. They go duck hunting,
Uh-huh.
and I said, "John, explain about a 3 because I noticed lots of times, like you said, their persona must be right."
Yep.
And he admitted that he ironed his clothes before he went out duck hunting, the clothes he
Uh-huh.
went duck hunting
Right.
in. And another guy laughed in the room because
Yeah.
he goes, "That's me. I do it too. I have to, like, look good even duck hunting." And
Mhm.
so to understand that, it's like now I really see, oh, I need to let him know, I love you just because you're you, not
Exactly.
because of that. And then my both my daughter's children go to schools where they wear a uniform.
Uh-huh.
And so I'll look for the 4 sometimes because they said they're real creative and they would wear the uniform, they would wear it according to the rules, but they'd find some way to make it unique. Like I like to
Yep.
turn my collars up. They'd find something. So there's just so many fun things like that about what you're describing about the Enneagram to kind of just spot one, understand
Mhm.
them, and then to give them the words they need to hear to make them feel
Yep.
good. It's just amazing.
Well, and I 100% agree with you that as a parent, and we do have my book, uh, Enneagram for Moms, and we really do talk about that with our children. Even though you can't really type your children, and I get into this in the book until they're probably teenagers or older, but we at least know that one of these 9 messages is the one they want. So why not just say them, all of them to your kid from time to
That's
time?
a good
But
point.
when you do find your kids type, you know the message their heart longs to hear. And we get to have the privilege to say that in one form or another throughout the rest of their lives to really reiterate that. But here's what's beautiful about using the Enneagram with the gospel is that Christ has satisfied our core longing, this message that our heart longs to hear. And so, because even as parents, we can say it until we're blue in the face, and that doesn't mean it's going to go into their heart as deeply as it needs to, because we're only human. But Christ satisfies, like a spring of living water, each of our child's and our own core longing. And so that message is really the catalyst or the key into real transformation because we're looking for it, we're longing for this message. But when we realize, oh, wait, he's already satisfied it and continues to satisfy me with it, it allows our nervous system to calm down and to receive it in its full entirety.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Yeah. When
All right.
we
Well,
after we do my number, I'm gonna ask you a question related to that.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. We're 2 away or 1 away. and then we'll get into yours. It'll be really fun to hear what your thoughts are.
Okay.
Okay, so first up before yours is the type 5, which is the analytical investigator. And the type 5's desire to be capable, to be competent, knowledgeable, insightful, and prepared with knowledge. They fear being overwhelmed, invaded in their space, to be incapable, ignorant, and then depleted, really internally, but their resources. But so what they struggle with is what's called avarice. Now, avarice can usually mean greedy with money, but here it means that they're holding tightly on their energy reserves and the things that they possess because they feel like they're going to run out. Think about a cell phone battery. If our internal or interactive energy was like a cell phone and you woke up every day, had it plugged in, but it only would go to 20% for the rest of the day, you would really kind of be very restrictive with how much you would use it or let others use it. And that's really how a 5 is in with interactions. And so they're very mindful of boundaries and relationships so it doesn't deplete them too much. But they long to hear your needs are not a problem. And a lot of times 5s can feel very, what does that mean? And really what it means is that they have the need for a lot of alone time. But our world, especially here in America, no, you need to be with lots of people all the time. And what the message they are longing to hear is your needs are not a problem. Okay, so now let's dive into your type 6, the faithful guardian. And this is my husband, my son, my mom, my best friend. I'm surrounded by 6s.
Wow.
Um, and the 6s desire security, guidance, and support, certainty, and assurance. They fear itself, being unsafe, unsupported, abandoned, targeted, and left alone. And not alone as in just by themselves one day, but just that abandonment feeling. But they struggle with anxiety. Now, every type can be anxious. What this means is that they have this desire to plan and predict worst case scenarios or negative happenings to hopefully make sure that those things don't happen. So they're always in this kind of state of apprehension and worry and a little bit of hypervigilance. And here's the reason why is that they have an inner committee that is chiming in. So it might sound something like, well, let's say type 6 might be like, okay, I'm going to go do this. Well, then all of a sudden the inner committee is like, well, did you think about this? But wait, what about that over there? But did we plan on that? And did we plan for this, and this? I don't know. That's not going to work because over here we've got these things. So there's this flood of information. So what a 6 will do is look outside themselves because all of a sudden they have self-doubt. They look outside themselves for a trusted guidance and support system, whether it's a person, a religious institution, or some other kind of leader, which is hard because sometimes we can't find people that we really trust. And so that can actually ramp up the anxiety for the 6 if they don't have something to anchor and hold them steady with. Now, what they long to hear is you are safe and secure. So, how did that resonate with you?
So, being a 6, and my mother said, "Oh, you're a 7." I'm like, "No, I'm a 6 because I've worst case scenarioed everything you could ever imagine."
Uh-huh.
So, but I always think back to God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. And wondering if somehow in the deeper understanding of all that, my question was, does each number more like have certain lessons to learn in life? Like I have to
Yep.
realize my big lesson is not to fear, and my big lesson is trust God. Just give it,
Yes.
I'll tell myself, give it to God, give it to God, give it. So is there, each one has a certain
Yes.
spiritual lesson?
Each one has their own lessons to learn. Some things that are hard for you might feel easy to me. Some things that are really hard for me will feel very easy for you. And, it's just, so it's very interesting how that works. But yes, for the 6, one of the things that the 6 needs to learn for sure, because all people need to learn to rely on God and to trust Him because He is the truth and the way. But the thing that the 6 needs to work on is to trust themselves. And it's not saying trust yourself over God. No, no, no. We're not saying that. What I'm saying is, when you see 6s have great discernment. But as soon as that inner committee chimes in with all the other possibilities, they go into self-doubt and they then negate what their discernment is, and they look outside themselves, and they're really kind of looking for someone else to either agree with them or kind of, almost give them the permission to move in that direction safely that they originally thought was the right way.
Yeah.
And so what we're hoping is that the six will learn to trust that intuition that God has given them. So it's obviously this combination of trusting what the Spirit is placing on your heart and the truth that is already there. Now, obviously, it's this, we're humans, we're flawed. So it's not trust yourself every single moment. We want to, do our due diligence, but the 6 will oftentimes go way far away from even trusting their typical discernment. And that's what we're wanting them to do. And it can make them feel as if they are afraid a lot. But here's what's interesting: 6s may feel like they're the most afraid, but they're actually the most courageous on the Enneagram. And the reason being is that they're constantly being bombarded with all of these worst case scenarios, but they keep moving forward. And that's where real courage comes from. So, does that resonate with you?
Every word you said, that makes so much sense. So I need to learn to
Hmm.
trust myself and then trust God. But you're
Yep.
right. I second guess myself a whole lot. I did
Yeah.
want to tell two little cute stories about fives because my dad was a five.
Uh huh. Yeah.
And he would be at parties when, my parents are in their 20s or something, and he would just leave, and go somewhere. And so but here's a better one. My daughter Candace, growing up, had a good friend, Lisa, and my dad always called her Cindy Crawford because she was just so gorgeous. Here's this beautiful little girl, and all the kids are hanging out at our house, and she would leave. And she might
Yep.
come back for a little while, and she would leave, and I thought, "What's the matter? Are they not being nice? Do I need to have more refreshments? What is it?" And then later, when I learned the Enneagram, I thought, "Oh, it's sucking all of her energy. She's
Yep.
gotta leave for a while. She
Yep.
can't handle all this." So I learned that a little bit later, but wow, what nice that was to understand. Oh, and then one more. So Enneagram, as you know, is like good in business. So when I had my
Yes.
company, we'd have these Monday meetings, long table, and everybody there. And I had my chief technology officer was a five. And so,
Hmm.
from what I understand of fives, they're not going to be the first one to raise their hand and speak up.
Right.
He's just sitting there listening to what everybody's saying. And I knew he wasn't going to say anything. And I would make sure every meeting to go, Steve, what do you think about that?
Hmm.
All these words of wisdom came out because he understood. He
Absolutely.
was observing the whole room, knew what everything going on. But if I hadn't have said it, it
Yep.
wouldn't have happened. So it's kind of
Exactly.
one of those many reasons why I love the Enneagram. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's such a great example because, like you said, in a meeting or a family, the fives can be somewhat overseen or overlooked when yet they are hyper observant. Even if people don't think they are soaking it all in, and they have a wealth of information because they're all about bringing information in, and they really kind of file it away like a filing cabinet,
Yeah.
and they can just pull it back up whenever they need it, which I find fascinating because that's not
Yes.
me. And so I love that to call upon them. Now, sometimes they need a little bit more time to process it, but if they're ready to share, if they have thought about it, they have so much wisdom to offer. So I love that example. Perfect example for sure.
And I remember my dad, I hear that sevens, this, like you said earlier, love to gather information. And so we'd be
Yes.
discussing something. And I go, Daddy, there's no more information to gather. What do you think about
Right.
this? And then
Right.
I could get him to talk. Okay, take it away with
Exactly.
sevens, one of my favorite numbers. They're so
Yeah.
fun.
My dad's a 7.
Okay.
The enthusiastic optimist, and they desire to be happy, satisfied, and fully content, but they fear being trapped in emotional pain, boredom, being limited, and missing out on something fun. And they struggle with the core weakness of gluttony. Now, this isn't just about food, though they love to try usually tons and tons of different varieties of things, but it's a trying different things in life, having more stimulation and excitement of life. And they long to hear you will be taken care of. So the sevens, the gluttony of life is it's kind of think of them having this internal bucket that has holes at the bottom. And they're always the optimists. They're like, it's fine. I'll just go do more fun things. And they gather all this fun stuff and put it in their bucket, but then it kind of seeps out the bottom. And they're like, no problem. They go for more and more and more, but that can get really exhausting. What they're wanting is to have that bucket filled so they're feeling content and satisfied. And what we need them to experience is the moment, the current moment. So a lot of times they're off to the next fun thing, but the more that they can savor the moment and savor the blessings they already have, that's where the holes get plugged up. And then they get to start to experience contentment inside. And that word savor, I actually really got it from my dad because he will eat his food so slowly. And I'm like, Dad, we have got like everyone's been done for 20 minutes and we would like to get out of this restaurant. And I'm like, why are you eating it so slow? And he's just like, I'm just savoring this wonderful food. And I was like, that is such a great example of what we really want sevens to do in the present moment. So that's just a great picture of sevens. Did you have a fun story about them?
Just a brief story. I had a 7 friend, but I never could get her to commit to doing something until the last minute because they want to keep all their options open.
Oh,
And I
yes,
was like, "Okay,
absolutely.
well, I'm gonna have to ask somebody else because I know you're not gonna make you like all the options, like the world is my thing." But,
Yep,
well, I'll tell you another, example of it that I've realized in myself, and we haven't gotten into wings, but you have a little bit of the number on either side of you. So I have a strong 7 wings since my mom thought I
yes.
was a 7, and I do notice myself now I don't wanna feel pain, don't tell me about it, no, no.
Yeah.
And I have to realize sometimes I might seem very incompassionate when somebody's
Mm,
had something come up in their life, but it's because like, "I don't wanna go there. All's good.
yep,
It's all good. Let's don't go there." So,
right.
it's that's another nice thing about understanding the Enneagram. I'll go, you just don't wanna feel that, and you need to feel that." Yeah.
Yeah,
So, those are
yep.
my stories of 6.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, sevens are really they're kind of the escapists of pain. They're always looking for the next fun, exciting thing. And yet reality sometimes, and we're gonna get into this in a little bit, makes us, and forces us to look at pain. And if we don't take that opportunity, we can get ourselves into some pretty big struggles.
Yes.
But I'm sure we'll probably dive into that here in a little bit.
Okay.
Um, okay, so the last two are the passionate protector, which is type 8, and they fear being controlled, powerless, manipulated, at the mercy of injustice, and they desire to protect themselves and those in their small inner circle. But they struggle with the sense of excess or lust. So for them, they're looking to push themselves and to really will themselves to get what they want. And so I call them big diesel snowplows, like up in the Midwest or the North, because when they're at their healthiest, they see everyone that has a need and they say, hey, get behind me. I've got you. And they plow a path that is just amazing. That is what we need them for. Unfortunately, when they're getting a little less healthy, they start to nick people on the side of the road. And then when they're really unhealthy, they're just going to plow over people and get what they want.
Hmm.
And that is where the excess can really come in. But what they long to hear is you will not be betrayed. And eights are some of the most tender hearted, and they really experience some sort of betrayal or pain in the past. And so that's why they put this really big, strong armor. That's why I call it a big diesel snowplow. They put this big, strong armor on to protect themselves from this very vulnerable, tender part of their heart that they kind of don't want others to see because they're afraid they're going to be betrayed or harmed due to that vulnerability.
Yeah. So one of my former business partners was an 8. It was so funny.
Mm,
Before those Monday meetings, I'd go read over everybody's number again. I got to get this
yeah.
straight. And I understood that about him, that they a lot of times are looking to be betrayed. And so I always had to watch to let him know I would be genuine. I heard somebody teaching the Enneagram once, and they said, if you want to look for like a missionary,
Hmm.
somebody that's willing to go out into the jungle with the cannibals and preach the word. They're 8s. They are 8s. And I thought, okay, okay. And you're right. They're going to take care of everybody else. and they're the big, strong kind, but they have that soft
Mhm.
heart. It seemed like there was something I was gonna say around the soft heart. I'll let you know if I can remember it. So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I think
definitely.
missionaries are 8s, those people that can just plow through and
Mhm.
protect the underdog. But
Yeah, and that's why, because a lot of people call them bulldozers, and I'm like, I wanted something that really captured how God created them, and that big diesel snowplow is like, no, you were created to plow a path for others that they couldn't do on their own. And it's like a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is a great example of an 8 that did that. There's lots of people in the civil rights movement, but he was the front runner. And to have someone like that is just so remarkable. But the last but not least is my type, the type 9, which is the peaceful accommodator. And we desire inner peace, stability, and connection. We fear any kind of conflict, tension, discord, losing relationship with others. And so we get stuck in the weakness or the struggle of sloth. And this isn't just a physical laziness because actually some nines are some of the busiest people I know, sometimes myself included. It's that we are slothful to know ourselves. And the reason is because we fear conflict so much or any kind of discord or tension, we go along to get along. Well, what that means is we don't know ourselves because we've gone along to get along our whole lives. When someone asks us what we want or what we like, we're like, I don't know. What do you want? Or what do you like? I'll follow that. And so it's a slothfulness of knowing oneself. That's what that means. But what we long to hear is your presence matters. So those are all 9 types. Do you have any fun stories about the type 9?
I do. So, my daughter Cassie's a 9. She's
Mhm.
married to Drew, who's a 9. My daughter Candace is married to Andy, who's a 9.
Oh, wow.
So you've got the 6s, we've got the 9s, but
Yeah.
I can tell when I've been around a 9
Hmm.
because it's contagious, I call it. You just
Oh.
feel calm and like everything's good with the world. At least when I'm with 9s, they're just so peaceful. It's just
Mhm.
wonderful. Every now and then I'll go, Cassie, I need a Cassie fix. Just come be around me and give that calm effect
Yes.
out. And it was so cute. I journal every morning and keep a journal. So I was looking through it and remembered this a few weeks ago. It seemed like I had 4 days in a row that everything was going my way. It was so calm and so peaceful. And I mentioned to
Mm.
Cassie, I go, "Gosh, I've just been so calm and peaceful lately. I hadn't even I forgot to worry." She goes, "I do that all the time. I forget to worry." I thought, "Oh,
Yes.
you 9, I want to
Yes.
be you."
Well, and my mom's a 6, and man, she would just, worry, 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 and she's a mom, so she's telling me all her worries, and I'm thinking, You know, I just I don't think I wanna put energy to that until I know I need to worry about it. Like, if it hasn't happened yet, you know, and that's just the way my mind works. Now, don't get me wrong, I was trained to worry. She trained me really well, and now that I'm a mom and a grandmom, I can go there. But, at a younger age, it was like, "Yeah, that just takes a lot of energy. I don't think I wanna do that." And I
So
just kinda
smart.
went about my day.
And it shows
Yeah.
your purple glasses. Yes, that's so
Yeah.
smart. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
So that kind of rounds out the 9 types. And, what's just so beautiful about how God created us is, he could have created us all the same. We could have just been like robots and just could have been the same, but he wanted diversity. He wanted us to be different and unique. And we aren't going to get into the layers of the Enneagram. You touched on the wings, but there are so many layers. And sometimes people will say, "You mean there are only 9 personalities?" And what I help them to understand, there aren't 9 kinds of people. There are 9 core motivations. And then when you bring in, like what you said, the wings, and there's other things that help each of our types basically take on a different shade of that color. So, for instance, I talked about on our logo, each Enneagram type has a color represented just to help us kind of with that analogy with the glasses having different shades. Well, if the 9s, let's say, are a type purple, well, you don't just walk into Sherman-Williams and just say, "Give me purple." They're gonna look at you like, "Well, which color of purple?" There's a vast array of shades and tones and etc. And that's the same with the Enneagram. So just because someone is a type 9 does not mean all type 9s are exactly the same. They do share those core motivations that we just went over. But there's a vast array of different attributes and talents and gifts and the story that they bring from their life and skill sets, etc., that makes them uniquely them, and which I love. So we're not all the same. We're all vastly different. But the Enneagram is just so great because it gives us common language to understand why we think, feel, and behave, and those core motivations. So for me, if you were to, let's say, start getting upset with me right now, which no, you wouldn't, but if you were, as a 9, I would start to get into my core fear, the fear of conflict and tension. And my tendencies of how I would react to that are going to get activated and triggered. And as a 9, what that usually means is I'm going to get quiet, or I might accommodate, or I might people please, or I might, withdraw. So there are typical tendencies that can happen when our core motivations get activated. And so by understanding that, we can then better assess, am I doing this in a healthy, self-regulated way? Or am I in a less healthy or unregulated way? And that's why the Enneagram is so powerful, is because it helps us to see if we're in a healthy to less healthy state. And, it's not pull yourself up by your bootstraps. What's great about this from a gospel perspective is our relationship status with God is always there because of what Christ did. So when we're struggling and we're less healthy, we know that our status is still the same. And when we can rely and depend on that, it's the Holy Spirit that helps us to become healthier as we kind of move through the movements. I mean, we're not just going to sit on the couch and go, you know what? The Holy Spirit's just going to make me healthy by just sitting here. So we do the work, but it's through trust and reliance on who he is in and through us. And that's the beautiful thing of how using the Enneagram from a gospel perspective can really help us.
That's cool. So cool. I love it. I love it how you can, yes, how it makes us to be better and
Yeah.
understand. So true. So with today's stressful world,
Yeah.
how would a 9 perceive what's going on today? What's your knee jerk reaction?
Yeah. So some of the things I was thinking about with the way that the world is right now, and just it's everything. We're talking finances, the gas prices are so high, food is expensive. There's so much uncertainty, and frankly just people are exhausted from it all, and it's exhaustion from the unknown of the future. So for the 9s, we're going to feel very overwhelmed by all of this information, but the conflict in the world that's happening. So it's not just conflict at us, just when I'm listening to the news or reading the news, I actually feel the conflict in me, and it is exhausting for me. And so I can feel the tension and how people are suffering. And sometimes I just want to ignore. I want to numb out. I want to check out. And that's a typical way that a 9 tries to deal with stress. And there are some healthy ways to go about that. There's healthy ways, right? Taking vacations, time off, like praying, um, maybe singing praise songs, like or reading scripture. There's lots of ways for us to self-regulate, but the unhealthy ways might be for me to ignore what's going on, not pay attention, and just going about life as if nothing's going on. Well, you could only do that for so long, but the gas price is going to eat at your wallet. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to wonder why, your bank account is going down faster than it typically does. Type 9s can get into this pattern of not paying attention or ignoring or withdrawing from life when it feels too big, too conflictual. So for the 9s, one way that they can kind of self-regulate is by taking awareness of how they're trying to numb out or check out or disassociate and being more present. Now, that's going to take some energy. So they are going to have to kind of fluctuate between kind of resting and kind of chilling out so that they can have the energy to see what's hard. And then the best thing for them is to take action, which takes a lot from them, but it's the best thing because they long to hear their presence or voice matters. Well, if their voice and presence matter, which we all know for any person on this world, it does, for them to take the next right step or right action is not only going to be beneficial for them, but for those around them, because these are the peacekeepers, the mediators of the world. And that's really what we need right now. We need, if all the nines in the world were to really go into action and to be peaceable. I mean, think about having um, a million, let's say, Fred Rogers, take action. I mean, the world would be at such a better place, right?
Yes.
But so often us nines are so afraid of conflict and tension that we then withdraw and retreat. And so the need of the moment is for the nines to recognize that they matter and to step in and to bring that peace, that harmony, that kindness, that compassion that they are so natural at. So that's a little bit of how the world is affecting nines. I know for myself. And I'm speaking to myself and kind of taking that step in because I know I too want to withdraw because it feels so big and overwhelming.
That's a good one. I like that. That makes so much.
What about you? And as a six, how is the world affecting you?
You know, like you talked about the news, or I think you did, wanting to stay up on top of the news or whatever so we could best case scenario it. I'll find myself watching the news a lot, and then I'll find myself going, no, where's HGTV? I just can't do it
Yes.
anymore. And then, in a way, it has moved me to a really good place because I've gone, they are saying so many bad things about the world. Everything from the riots here, the this, that, the attempted assassinations, all that. I think this is great because it got so big and so bad that I have to trust God. It's
Yeah,
not something I can handle any longer on my own. Which
absolutely.
that is
Yeah.
where I think, a lot of people that fear have to get, where it's like, "Oh, that you can't handle that one on your own, so you might as well just give it to God."
Yeah. It's kind of like it became a breaking point. So you're right. So sixes are usually in the world right now. If they're not at the place that you're talking about, they're going to be very fearful of what could happen because of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And they might be prepping, they might be getting storages of food or extra gas and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just
Right,
saying
yeah,
what some sixes would do.
yeah.
Um,
I can
and
identify, yeah.
yeah, they're going to go into, okay, how am I going to care for my family? And what is this going to mean? And all the things. And that um, can really exhaust, like you said, the type six, because there literally is 1,000 different ways any scenario could go, right? Like we don't know which way it's going to go. And so it can be very exhausting. And so for the six, really the self-regulation piece, like you said, is to recognize in this moment, I am okay, and he is taking care of me, and we know that he will take care of me. Now, we don't know how, we don't know what that's gonna look like, but we do know that he has won the victory, and so in some form or fashion, he is taking care of all things, and so relying on that is gonna be really important for the six in this time.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, what
Yeah.
about let's just jump to the 3 since that's my husband. Tell
Yeah,
me how I'm
absolutely.
gonna what he's gonna do so I can be ready for it.
Yeah. So, they have this pressure to succeed and to have goals. And so in this season, they might be looking at their checkbook and they're like, hey, I'm not sure how things are going to go, but I'm not going to allow this to take us down. So they're going to set up new goals, new strategies to overcome what might be happening. And threes never take on a goal that they don't know that they are going to succeed. If they don't think they're going to succeed, they're not going to take it on. So they are going to think about whatever that goal is, and then they're going to look at the goal, and then they're going to make a list moving kind of backwards so that they're like, okay, so I want to go there. So I'm going to pull it back, and here's step 1, step 2, step 3. So they know exactly the steps that they're going to need to take in order to achieve that goal, that status, that um, reputation, whatever it is. So if they're wanting, let's say, as believers, not all believers are in this camp, but let's say they're wanting to appear successful in some form, shape, or form, and they're like, you know what? Money is really tight. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have the clothes or the car or the things that I want. They might really up the ante and work harder. So they might become a more of a workaholic, or try new ventures, or maybe look for a better job that would pay more, since living expenses are going to be more tight. Now, that can be exhausting too, to these endless goals, these endless status. So for the 3, it's really their self-regulation is about recognizing that it's not about the image. It's not about the achievements. It's about being their true, authentic self and how God sees them in all of who they are, even though sometimes they're trying to hide not so great parts of them. God sees all of them and loves them and came for them and died for them. And so once they recognize that, it allows them to kind of settle in and not work so hard and so vigorous at this image, where they can actually be more present to who they really are, and rest in that love from Him. So does that kind of make sense with the threes that
Yes,
you know?
thoroughly. That's thoroughly. Yes, good. I will know how to better deal with him with stress. That is so good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just go down the line then. How about ones?
Okay. Yeah. So the type ones, what an exhausting time for them. So the type ones have a loud inner critic. Now, we all have some kind of inner critic, but this is like a megaphone at their ear. And this inner critic assaults them with all the imperfections of the world. And right now, that is a lot. So they are constantly being bombarded with everything that is unethical, wrong, bad, etc. And they are really hoping that others will be responsible and do the right thing. But when they look around, it doesn't feel like anyone is. So they are exhausted, not only with trying to make things right, but really with the sense of resentment that no one else seems to be doing the right thing. So for the ones, in order to self regulate, we want them to first see and name what's happening. Yes, this is a really hard season in the world, in our country, and that they are not called to be the saviors. Now, the inner critic might say that they need to, but they aren't the ones called to do that. God is the one who will take care of all things. And yes, they can do their part, but at the same time, they can take that a little too far because they feel like they have to do so much. And so, what we're wanting the ones to do is to learn how to play, to be childlike, not childish, because they're going to think, wait, I'm not going to be like a child. We want them to be childlike because so often in their youngest years, they had to be little adults and to do the right thing. And they never really experienced this childlikeness. But when we think about Christ, He welcomed children. And so for the one to learn, yes, you will do your responsibilities and your duties. That's just who you are. But even in the midst of these hard times, you can also learn to be childlike. So sometimes that's getting outside into nature and just seeing how nature is perfectly imperfect. And to recognize that even in this season, even though it's imperfect, how can we still show up in the fullness of who we are? And that's what God can do, and that's where He can meet us.
Mm. I know you've said before that we have a little bit of each number.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so I know I have some of that one. And I heard a statement, gosh, about 6 months ago, and it was very freeing.
Hmm.
And it was saying, Lord, is that my burden to carry?
Yep.
Because there's some people that feel like whatever they just heard about, whatever sob story I heard about, and I don't mean sob in a bad way, like somebody that needs something in their life, if I felt like, I have to help, and it's like, "No, let me pause here. Lord, is that one my burden to carry?" And so many more
Yeah,
times he says no, and that's
absolutely.
that's that's how I deal with the little bit of my one that there is.
Yeah. And actually, that let's piggyback onto that with twos, because that's the same for twos. So, twos also are going to be really exhausted in this world because twos, it's like they have these little antenna that come out and feel the room or kind of feel what's going on. And they can feel people's feelings and needs. And there are so many feelings and so many needs in the world. And so they're being bombarded with all of this. And they have this thought that they need to negate their own feelings and needs. So they push those aside. And then what they want to do is they want to move in to help others. And part of the reason of that is if they were to take care of themselves, they see that as being selfish, or they fear others will think that's being selfish. And so they're like, oh, I can't do that because I'll be rejected, which is one of their greatest fears. So, oh, I'm not going to focus on me. Let me focus on you. But you can imagine right now in the world right now, everyone has needs. Everyone is tired. Everyone is struggling. And if the two really took the time to be helpful to everyone that they interacted with, they would be exhausted.
Yeah.
They literally wouldn't be able to function. And in the Christian world, a lot of times we champion or cheer this kind of person on. Oh my gosh, you're so kind. Oh, this is so amazing. Yes, and we also need to listen to what Christ said. When Christ said, let me wash your feet. Well, a lot of times the twos are like, oh, yeah, I'm going to wash other people's feet. Let me do that too. No, no. Let Christ wash your feet. He wants to take care of you. And that is so hard for the two. Like when Peter said, don't wash my feet. And he's like, no, this is what is right to do right now. And so a lot of times twos think that taking care of others is the only right way to do life, when actuality, it's allowing Christ to take good care of us. And when we are then filled up with all that Christ has given us, then we'll have the right amount of energy and the ability to then help others. But if we're not taking care of ourselves, we cannot take care of others. And that's so important.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
What about type five? Let's talk about type five being your dad and a few other people that you know. I mean, another, oh my goodness, the fives are so really fixated on their internal resources, also their external resources, making sure that they don't run out. And right now, if the world economy keeps going the way it's going, things like that could happen. And so you might see the five really kind of hunker in and do more savings. Maybe there'll be a little bit more of a penny pincher. Maybe they won't be as interactive with others because they're more exhausted. And all of that in some ways could be helpful and true unless it goes too far. So with the five, what we want them to recognize when they're self-regulating is, yes, you will need some time alone to process your thoughts and feelings, but don't isolate yourself too much. So God created us to be in community. And yes, community can wear the fives down. So we want them to have enough alone time so that they can then be in a community that is safe and doesn't feel over exhausting to them. And so they're going to have to, in this kind of season, be very mindful of who they're interacting with so that it is more life giving than life draining.
Mm-hmm.
What would that, when you think about your dad, how does that land on you?
Yeah, that's exactly. Might maybe withdraw and think I need to study this problem more. What's going on here? But yeah, no, that sounds exactly like what she said. So
Yeah.
what about
Another,
go ahead.
well, I was going to say another great thing for fives is exercise. And it's picking whatever body movement feels right for them. So it's not just one, there's not one right exercise or body movement. And the reason why this is important is fives are so in their head and their mental processes that most fives will say that below the neck almost feels like an appendage or like it doesn't really exist, like they just don't think about it. But it's really important the more that they, let's say, take a walk or go swimming or go hiking or whatever it is, they feel more in their body. They feel more connected with their feelings and their gut intuition, and it helps them to not just be in the head space, which can be, exhausting if they're kind of in that space for too long. So what you'll hear from fives is any kind of body movement really helps to regulate them.
My other business partner was a 5, and he rode his bike a whole lot. But and later when this show's over, you may say, "Marsha, I can't believe you gave those 2 examples." But so here's one. I remembered what I was gonna say about the 8, but the 5, my mom studied the Enneagram a lot, and she goes, "They think that they're not seen." And my dad was a brilliant person, had his own company, and she said, "Justin, you kinda think people don't see you, don't you?" And he goes, "Yeah." Like he kinda believed he was invisible.
Yeah. Oh,
And
for sure.
and then for the 8, when I learned that they're just out there, so when I was studying up for meetings, it's like if you don't go toe to toe with them, they
Oh,
don't
yeah.
even think you exist.
Yep.
So one
Yep.
day I said, "Wally, if you said such and such," and I just kinda went like this, and I said, "If I'm not real like this with you, you probably don't even think I exist, do you?" And he just kinda smirked like, "She knows me." And
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
one thing I love about the Enneagram. You start picking up on all these little things.
Yes.
And once again, it's not to get the head jump on them. For me, it
No.
would be like, this is how I have to talk with Wally, or this is how
Right.
daddy's going to respond. So,
Right.
yeah, I hope.
Well, and what we say is don't use the Enneagram as a sword or a shield because the Enneagram gets to the heart of why we do what we do. So it gets into the inner world. And so you don't want to use it as a sword like, oh, you're being such a 6 today or an 8 or whatever. Like you don't want to hurt someone with it. But you also don't want to use it as a shield where it's like, I'm a 9. So sometimes I just check out. Sorry. Like that is not what God has called us to do. God has called us to grow, to transform into the likeness of who He has created us to be. And so it's really our um, privilege is to learn about ourselves and to grow as closely to the way He's designed us to be the healthiest version of our personality type. And that's hard. All growth is hard, but it's also really good. Not just good for ourselves, but it's good for all of those that are around us too.
Hmm.
Well,
Okay,
good. Well,
so
we've got
the
let's see,
4 and a
7.
7.
Yeah, 7 and 8 we haven't touched on.
Okay,
I think, right?
4,
I
7,
think
and
so.
8. I don't think we did 4.
Oh, we didn't do 4. Oh, my apologies, 4s out there. Okay, so 4s, um, you know, I think this season can feel really painful for 4s because they have a lot of emotions and a lot of intuition as well. And so they can see the pain on other people's faces. Now, here's where they actually excel. So they're the bodybuilders in the world of emotions, and they're capable and able to sit with others that are suffering and can listen to them as long as the other person wants to talk about their inner world and feelings and what's going on. And so that is actually one of the things that a lot of us need, right? Because it's like, are there anyone that I can talk to or go to? And 4s are excellent at that. The hard part for the 4, though, is their depth of emotions, and a lot of times in these situations, they can feel misunderstood, feel very different, feel that they don't have, the the gifts or the abilities to overcome this really difficult and challenging time. But so for the 4s, we're wanting them to it's called equanimity, and that means emotional balance. A lot of times, 4s will hear that and think, oh, you're trying to get rid of my emotions. And that is absolutely not what we want. We're wanting you to learn how to balance the emotions. So that means emotions are still there. And a great example is Jesus Christ. So Jesus had all the emotions, especially when you think of him in Gethsemane. Like his emotions were so big and so vast and he embraced the reality of them, that he sweat blood. And so we don't want you to get rid of the emotions, but we're wanting you to bring it into self-regulation. So that's, I think, key. I think most of us Americans want to get rid of our emotions, or not have hard emotions. But the four is okay with that space. And so what we want them to hear from us is, please keep your emotions, but we need you to bring them to the healthiest, highest state so that you can bless us with that depth and with that intuition and knowledge. And so that can be a really amazing space if the fours can tap into that and recognize what a gift that they can offer by just being there and listening to others that are suffering. Because, there's some types that really don't want to go there. They don't want to talk about their own emotions, but they also don't want to listen to other people's, which is sad. Um, and the fours do such a great job there.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. So
Now
with
the sevens,
with the
oh,
7,
go
like,
ahead.
not wanna be that person that's
Yeah.
hearing it?
Yeah, so the sevens are not usually, now that this is not a blanket statement, are usually can struggle with too many negatives around them. So if someone's just being what they think is really negative, or uh, down, or having a hard time and not making the most of it, or turning it into a positive, that can be really hard for the seven. And so here we are in this world with lots of restrictions, and maybe like their pocketbook is starting to get restricted for the seven. Sevens really get upset when they're being restricted or limited, especially from doing something they want to do or what they think is fun. And so if they're feeling that restriction or limitation right now, they're going to be pretty antsy and wanting to just bounce off to the next fun thing. And sometimes they'll actually do that when they don't even have, let's say, the resources. So maybe they'll go into debt. To have that fun, or maybe they'll try fun things to alleviate the pain or the struggle that aren't the best or healthiest things to try. And that could be all sorts. It could be, over shopping or overeating, and it could, slip into drugs and other things. And so we just want the sevens to recognize in this hard season that there are other ways to self-regulate than just the next fun thing. And in actuality, being present in the moment and dealing with the reality that's actually here, as hard as that is actually going to give them tenfold of the satisfaction that they're looking for, because they're savoring what good is around them. And so this is where gratitude lists for sevens is going to be so important. They might feel like that sounds so boring or just mundane, like everybody does gratitude lists. But actually, for the seven, if they really do take the time to even write down 10 things that really they're grateful for, it can really unlock some things for them in such a trying time right now. And so their eyes won't be so fixated on what they can't get or what they're limited to, and they start focusing on what they have and enjoying that even more to the full.
Yeah, I like that because I do have that strong 7 wing, and when I was a
Uh-huh.
teenager, there was a Christian song that said, "Count your many blessing and God's perfect peace you find." Can't find the recording anymore, and so I'll tell myself that, "Count your blessings," and when you do, you start getting peaceful, so I could see so much how that's what a
Yeah.
7 needs, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, well, one of them left. What house that
One
8?
of them, yeah, are passionate protectors. Well, so this can be a very infuriating season for them, because eights really what they actually their hidden longing is that someone bigger and stronger than them is leading the way well. They're protecting people well, they're leading well, and we're just not seeing that anywhere across the board. And so no matter where they land, on any spectrum, they're not seeing a good leader. So they feel they have to then get up themselves and be that leader, whether it's in the office space, the home life, the community, and they're exhausted. And this really can burn them out because they feel it is up to them to protect themselves and those in their small inner circle. But we're hoping for the eights to self-regulate is recognizing the truth that they really are, in a lot of ways, powerless. Um, Now that doesn't mean that we can't do our due diligence. And, let's say we do want to run for city council or the PTA or whatever it is to give, a good push in the right direction in a leadership area. That's great. But we can only, as a human, do so much. So in the other areas of life, we are powerless. And when we recognize our powerlessness, it actually affords us the ability to lean in and trust the one who is powerful and the one who will never betray or forsake us, and that is Christ himself, and who did all the work that was needed through his life, death, and resurrection to protect us, to bring us back to himself in victory. And so that's where the gospel really shines again, is how Christ satisfies the core longing that each of these types hold. So in this season, all the 9 types are going to struggle for their own reasons, their own core motivation reasons, but Christ has already and continues to work on their behalf in this very hard season.
I love that. I love that. Well, before I get to this one question, would you start telling everybody about the many books and courses you have? Because I'm sure by
Yeah.
this point, a lot of people are like, I want more. I want more. So tell us about all
Yeah.
this. You've done
Yeah. Well, thank you.
so many things.
Yeah, so we're on Instagram, Your Enneagram Coach. That's also our website, Your Enneagram Coach. Lots of free resources on there, but also courses. I've trained over 3,000 coaches worldwide. So those that want to use this tool to help bless others, that's what we do. That's one of my favorite things to do. But I have written 12 Enneagram books. A couple of them are behind me, so I've got 9 journals, one for each Enneagram type. So if you're wanting to know about your own type, and it's kind of a 21-day journal to learn about your type and how to understand your personality type from a Christian perspective. Um, our first book, which is over here, is called Becoming Us, and that is to help relationships and marriages know how to use the Enneagram to bless their relationships, to see each other through not only their own personal lens, but to see how our spouse sees the world and understands it and how we can have a better relationship. The one right behind me is called More Than Your Number. And this helps us to understand, kind of like I was saying earlier about the Sherman-Williams color. Yes, you have a main Enneagram type with its core motivations, but we do have a little bit of all 9 types within us. And so how do these other Enneagram parts affect us? And what does that look like? So that's what that book is going to explore. It's kind of almost my own and Jeff's personal learning growth journey. Memoir, but then kind of teaching and training others. And then this last one is Enneagram for Moms, and it's really Enneagram for parents, if I'm being honest. And this is really to help parents and grandparents, if I'm really kind of being honest, understand, am I parenting from a healthiest point of view for my personality type? And a lot of times we think we are, but when we start to kind of pull things back, sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Or, oh, well, I thought this was the right way to be a parent, but I think I might be overdoing it because usually a lot of times we overdo some of our strengths, which can become weaknesses. So by understanding how our personality is structured and seeing how we're using it, we can better attune our inner world to be a healthier parent and to really bless our kids for whatever Enneagram type they are. Because usually we're trying to make little versions of ourselves. Like I thought, oh, well, if I can just make little peaceful accommodators, life is going to be perfect. And God said, that's not what I gave you. So my son is a 6 and my daughter's a 2. And I need to love them for how God created them, but do that in the way that God created me as a type 9, and to honor how he created me, but to then honor them as well. And so that's really what that book gets to. in the back half of all of our books are the cheat sheets for each type. So you can go back there and just get bullet points. It's great. If you just want a quick reference of like for yourself with your husband, why is this type 3 doing this? You can go to the back and, get all the answers that you need from each of the books.
Now, I know I've gotten at least 1 or 2 of your things on Kindle. Are
Yeah.
most of your books on Kindle or all
Yep.
that they are? Okay, good.
Yep. They're all there.
I have
They
like
all have
450 books
been,
on here, so I just
yeah.
love one of the yeah.
And they all have, in Audible, audiobook form, so they're all there as well. Yeah, so and then we're also now just getting into the space of helping people that wanna go into workspaces. So we train the trainers to go into workspaces, to work with leaders and businesses, employees. That's one of our favorite things to do. So if anyone has a business that they want us to come in and really help them to find their employees and leaders Enneagram type so that they can learn because it's really important. This is what's so important. And actually, I know we were going to talk about like a big story of how the Enneagram was so impactful. Using the Enneagram in a business is really, I mean, in all spaces is so vital. But I'll give you an example. So I worked for a church many, many moons ago, and my husband was the associate pastor, and we had the senior pastor and the youth pastor, and I was the church secretary. So we're in this meeting, the four of us, and as the 9, I can feel the room. My husband, on the other hand, didn't quite always see what was happening. And he would come in on a Monday morning with our staff meeting. And as a good 6, he's ready to fix all the problems, right? Like, I saw what was, the worst case scenarios, and we're going to like fix them. Well, our senior pastor was a type 4. And after giving the sermon on a Sunday, he's feeling maybe insignificant. Like, that's just a hard place to be. So his feelings are big. He feels a little bit of shame, even though the rest of us think it was amazing. And so he's walking in tender, right? And here my husband's like ready to talk about all the problems and then tackle all the problems. Well, hearing all the problems, the pastor that just kind of heaped on more shame when that was not my husband's intent. So as we started using the Enneagram, both of them started to see these patterns and how they were both trying to do the best that they could, but they were missing each other. And as they understood, we were able to move our Monday meetings to a Wednesday, which gave our senior pastor more time to recover. And he gave Jeff the thumbs up, like, hey, if you see things that need to be taken care of, that you don't need my okay, Monday morning, you just go for it. And that is so vital in giving people the best platform for them to succeed versus trying to get everyone to conform in a way that's actually going to degrade the best of what they can offer. And so the Enneagram is just such a powerful, meaningful tool. And so that's what we are really kind of excited about to get into the workspace force because so many people we hear is like, I don't understand why my boss says this or why my employees won't do this, that, and the other. And I think if they understood the 9 lenses and they were able to take off their lens and put on someone else's lens and see it a different way, they will have greater compassion, understanding, forgiveness, and really ultimately love for other human beings.
Oh, I think that's so good. So good. So I'm so glad y'all are going into businesses more because I've
Yeah.
always thought how invaluable that is. I mean, it's like
Yes.
you've taken care of all of us. Now go take care of all the corporations.
Right.
And personally, people talk about Myers-Briggs and all that, but Enneagrams just make so much sense. Now, it took me
Yes.
a while to get all the numbers straight in my head. It took me a long
Yeah.
time. But then once
Yeah.
I did, it's like, this is just so much easier than
Yeah.
everything else. And you can
Yeah.
relate
And
them.
it can be at first a lot, but I think the thing that we're trying to do at Your Enneagram Coach is make things as easy to understand, to make it simple, so that it's actionable. That's the biggest thing. If the Enneagram, like what happened in our staff meeting, if we could make it actionable faster, you're going to see transformation not just happen more quickly, but it's going to last longer. It's going to be more substantial. And that's what we're all about is keep it simple and keep it profound.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things for me was just being able to love people better. I'll just,
Yes.
if there's something about them that annoys me, I'll go, that's just who they were created to be, and then just get over it real quick. So
Right.
that's what I love about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so enlightening and so wonderful. Everybody, you need to go check out my Enneagram coach. It's like just the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
And myenneagramcoach.com. And so if y'all enjoyed this, like us and subscribe and leave us some comments. We'd love to hear, and just be looking out there because Beth and I are going to talk a few more minutes and tell another story or two. But we sure enjoyed having y'all today, and join us next time for more Insights with Marsha.